Hello everybody, I should have made this video a long time ago. Reich Zerwinski asks, do you think old Udyr is a different champion than what Udyr is now? He feels so much better in skirmishes back then, now it's harder to 1v1 with champs he used to win back pre-rework. And let me tell you, I love old Udyr, I love new Udyr, both are just different flavors of kind of the same skirmishing, hybrid, multi-versatile, jack-of-all-trade champ we love. That being said, this is kind of a longer answer than I could reply to, so let me give you a video answer.
I'm going to be fully transparent. This is going to be a very ranty answer because, frankly, I wish League of Legends Classic existed and I could just load up a game and show you guys old footage and we could go through and talk about it. But the first thing that I really want to address here is 100% yes. Old Udyr was very, very different than new Udyr. Udyr's rework fundamentally changed the identity of Udyr. We went from being a Talon / Kiana-esque champion to being kind of like a Mundo, Skarner, Shyvana baby. It was never the same after the rework, and for those that never played old Udyr, your damage was base damage oriented, not max health damage oriented. So you just pumped out ridiculous amounts of raw damage and you could truly one-shot most squishy champions on the enemy team. The other thing that made Udyr insanely fun back in the day was he was hyper early game focused. So you could invade people in very common clear bath. You saw me play all the way to Challenger. Was literally a red buff start. You put a point in bear level 2 and you just walk around the map with EQ and just gank all 3 lanes. And it doesn't matter if you're 3 levels behind because level 2 Udyr did so much damage it didn't matter. The other thing that made Udyr really fun back then was the meta kind of fit this goofball playstyle really well because we had 1 minute and 30 crabs or whatever, or 2 minute crabs. We also had a lot of river fights. Dragon spawned very quickly. Rift Herald was the only topside objective. Camping laners was part of the meta, and invading was pretty much the only way to play jungle back then. Old Udyr just was hyper early game dominant, and the raw damage on the Q was very different from the max health damage that you see today. The other part of Udyr's identity that is unfortunately lost with time is the whole dynamic of building attack speed versus ability haste. Back in the day, the way the Udyr kit worked was you stayed in one stance and you got the effect for as long as you stayed in that stance. Of course, you wanted to cycle your stances in order to get bear stun and everything else, but the issue was you usually just wanted to stay in Q with 2.5 attack speed and just drill out tiger dots as much as you could. Tiger dots, for those that don't know, your Q used to do a damage over time effect dot, and it would bleed them out very similar to like a Talon bleed effect. How it used to work is every third auto would apply this dot effect, so the more attack speed you had, as you can imagine, you're applying more and more dots, so attack speed was one of the most valuable stats you could have on Udyr for Qmax Udyr and any form of Udyr where you were trying to do damage. These days, the most important stat for cycling your abilities is ability haste, because there is no reason to stay in a stance past the first 2 auto attacks, and you constantly want to be cycling your abilities, and that's where ability haste makes the largest amount of difference. And unfortunately, there's a lot of really fun builds like Rageblade builds back in the day that are just lost to time. You can still do them in 2025. They really are just lackluster compared to that. In addition, old Udyr really just had this insane dueling playstyle. You were a 1v1 champ. Of course, new Udyr can still 1v1, but it is not like it used to be. The game was truly won or lost based off that early level 2 to 3 invade on the enemy jungle, and that is what made him so much fun to play. I tell people all the time, this is probably the largest piece of Udyr that I miss. I wish that I could go back in time and play the early game version of Udyr because frankly in solo queue games just end so fast that a jungler who can get ahead in the first 5 minutes can steamroll the map, and that is exactly what Udyr used to be able to do. This element of Udyr is kind of lost to time again because you really need to scale up on most forms of Udyr regardless of which form you're playing these days. In addition, if you guys don't know, here's how the math works. Back in the day, the pre-rework Q, in order to do the same amount of damage on your Q now that you used to do at level 1 Q, you need to have 3 points in Q. Does that make sense? So back in the day, your level 1 Tiger was stronger than level 5, or the same strength as level 5 Tiger, which makes absolutely no sense. Level 6 Tiger, if you think about it, because you don't have an ult, so it's not until level 6 do you get 3 points in Q these days. So that's true, actually, because the other thing about Tiger Udyr back in the day that a lot of people have forgotten, you didn't put a point in R. You used to go QWEQ. So you had your damage points in Q a lot sooner. You actually were able to duel people at level 3 and 4 instead of having 1 point in every single ability, which is kind of stupid if you think about it, because Udyr is a dueling champ that can't duel at level 4 because the other champs have 2 points in their damage ability. Now, I'm not trying to just glaze old Udyr, right? Because new Udyr got a lot of other things too, namely versatility. He's way better at team fighting. He's a better tank presence and a frontline presence, but Riot, unfortunately, did what they did with most champions, just like Mordekaiser. They turned an extremely niche, fun champion into a broad enough champion that everybody can understand, to where truly even bad Udyrs are very effective at the champ, and then the best Udyrs, you know, the one trick such as myself, we certainly take it to another level. But let me tell you, if you were a really good Udyr back in the day, you were one of a kind, and you truly got the respect of the entire league community because he was such an underplayed, weak champion if you didn't know what you were doing. He was kind of this very skill-reliant champ, and if you had the skill, truly, people would gas you up in the all chat all the time because it was so fun to watch. Very, very similar to Master Yi. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a Master Yi pop off, and it's insane. It's very hard to execute on a consistent basis, but if you see a Yi get a 20-kill game, it feels almost unfair, and it makes you just want to watch the guy playing the champ, you know? So those are kind of my thoughts, you know? People always ask this, too, if I could have one or the other. Frankly, I just want League Classic. I don't know why Riot doesn't give us both. If I had to pick one or the other, new Udyr, because here's the sad truth. Old Udyr struggled against a lot of team comps, and even though I preferred old Tiger Udyr, new Udyr can be played into a higher percentage of teams, and that makes it to where most people that are good at this champion can get to Grandmaster's Challenger very, very easily. The final thing I'll say on that note, new Udyr can scale so much better than old Udyr. Anybody that played old Udyr back in the day, you'll remember kind of the ticking time bomb mentality you had, where if the game goes past level 13, old Udyr did not have max health damage, he did not have armor pen, and believe you me, he was immobile, and it made it very, very hard to do anything except split push past that 5 to 10 to 15 minute mark. While old Udyr was exceptionally good at generating those early game leads and then hopefully translating those leads into very quick victories, if you fell off those rails, it was very concerning because you had no late game presence, and frankly, you needed gold in order to get to the late game as old Udyr, and as we all know, even with current Udyr, you can get kited very, very easily. New Udyr at least has his Awaken E for CC immunity, you at least have your Awaken W for a huge shield. Old Udyr could truly just get caught with his pants down and die over and 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 over, especially if you fell behind solo laners and they got a bunch of experience ahead of you. Thank you again, guys, for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you disagree in any way, as always, just leave your comment. I read all my comments. Don't dislike. It hurts my chances of making it in this scene, and I hope to see you in your next one. Bye.
Dang. Call me so I can make it juicy for ya.